This video will show you how to build your shuttle rack. Look in the video description for links to the different sections of this video. For tools, you'll need 2 3/4 inch and 2 9/16 inch wrenches or sockets, but you can also use 19mm and 14mm wrenches or sockets as an equivalent. The first thing that you need to do is insert the rack pivot into your hitch receiver. The rack pivot has a wedge, which is operated by the bolt on the other end of the pivot. Now make sure that the wedge is loose enough so that you will be able to slide the pivot into your hitch receiver. As you insert the rack pivot, make sure that the holes in the pivot are lined up with the hole in your hitch receiver. Carefully slide it in until the holes are aligned. Once they are aligned, tighten up the bolt and the pivot to engage the anti-wobble mechanism. This will allow you to install your security pin. Next, grab the vertical tube, make sure that the sticker is facing outwards, and push the end of the tube into the pivot. Put in the gold colored 3-inch bolt, insert it from the left hand side and tighten it up until you begin to feel some resistance in the vertical tube's movement. Grab the 2 lock pins. We're going to insert both of them, push the lock pin through, and insert the spring clip. The first pin holds the rack in a vertical position, and the second pin can be used so that when the first pin is pulled, the rack can recline against the second pin. Next, install the lower cross tube, ensuring that the longer end of the cross tube is on the right hand side. Insert the bolts from the back to the front, and then put a washer over the other end closest to your vehicle and insert the nut as well. Use a wrench to ensure that the bolt is held in place as you tighten the nuts. Now we need to install the connector plates that will hold the vertical tube and the upper cross tube together. Push the bolts in from the back towards the front of the vehicle. Then grab the second connector plate and slide it over the 2 bolts. Once the second connector plate is on the bolts, grab the washer and the nut, but only spin them hand tight for now. Now we're going to install the upper cross tube. Make sure that the longer end of the cross tube is on the left hand side. Grab 2 more of the 1/2 by 3-inch bolts and align the holes so that the bolt can be placed through the connector plates and through the holes in the cross tube. Then slide on a washer and a nut, and just for now get them hand tight. Once they're all inserted, you can tighten up the bolts on the cross tube, but wait before putting the final torque onto the 2 bolts in the vertical tube. Now you can add a little bit of torque to the nuts on the vertical tube, just so you have some friction. Now what we're trying to do here is to get just enough friction that we can confirm that the top tube is level before we put in the final torque. Now we're going to put on the upper cradles. Put on the bolt from the back towards the front, and then put on the washer and the lock nut. Tighten the nut and hold the bolt in place until you see the bracket begin to deflect around the upper cross tube. Now you can start to install the rest of the upper wheel cradles, again putting the bolt in from the back towards the front, and then putting the washers and nuts on the wheel cradles close to the vehicle. So here you can see the bolts face out and the washers and nuts are on the vehicle side. Check with your rack instructions as for the spacing between the upper wheel cradles. Once you've got the spacing confirmed, tighten up the nuts while holding the bolts immobile with a wrench. When inserting the wheel cradle at the top of the vertical tube, make sure that the gap between the sides of the bracket for the upper wheel cradle, ensure the gap is the same on the left and right hand side between the upper wheel cradle and the connector plates on the vertical tube. Use your instructions to determine the first position for the leftmost wheel cradle, and then put the bolt in from the back towards the front, and then put on the washer and nut. Again here, using a wrench to hold the bolt immobilized while the nut is being tightened on the other side. Tighten it up until the wheel cradles just begin to deflect, and you can feel that the wheel cradles are immobilized on the lower cross tube. Confirm the spacing between each of the lower cradles as you install them, and tighten up each one of these nuts. The nuts are a metal lock nut, and they must be inserted in only one particular direction. Now we need to put on the tension cords, and these have two loops. One end is a simple slip knot. This end will go on your rack. The other end is an adjustable grip hitch. This loop, which we're looking at now, its length can be adjusted to suit the wheelbase of your bike. So here you can see the loop can be slid to adjust the size of the loop, but once tension is put on it, it will remain fast. Put the tension cords on at each of the lower wheel cradles, making sure that the slip knot end goes onto the rack, leaving the other end, with the adjustable grip hitch, to be put on each one of your bike's pedal axles. For the bungees, immerse the ends of the bungees in soapy water, and then put some of that soapy water onto the longer rivet of each cradle. So for the upper cradles, you can see that you start by putting the bungee on the side closest to the vehicle, and then the loops in the bungees are stopped by the shorter rivet, which is on the back side of the vehicle. For the lower wheel cradles, the bungee is inserted on the longer rivet, which is on the left-hand side, and then run through the wheel, and then the loops of the bungees are secured against the shorter rivet. Load your bike by lifting the front wheel into the cradle and turning the wheels to the right. Then, using minimal tension, secure the upper bungee. Now for the lower wheel, what you want to do is get the tension cord free so it's not going to get caught up in the bungee. Adjust the length of the loop so that you can get it over the end of your pedal. Now you may need to back pedal, but once you've done that, back pedal so that the freewheel engages the tension cord, and then secure the rear bungee. Now you can back pedal further, and what this does is it provides additional security to the bikes while they're sitting in the rack. Once you get to your destination, release the lower wheel bungee and release the tension cord. When you're loading your bikes, just have a quick look at the clearance between the brake levers and the top tube. And here you can see by reversing the order that these bikes are in the rack, that we have more clearance between the brake lever and the bike to the right. To get access to the back of your vehicle, you can pull out the upper pin and recline the rack back against the second pin. This will allow you to get access into the rear of the vehicle. Then you can push the rack back up into the vertical position and reinsert the lock pin. Make sure that you don't forget the spring clip. To remove the rack from the vehicle, get a 3/4 inch or 19mm wrench and loosen the bolt and it's behind the mast, and this is the bolt that we saw in the first step of this video. Loosen the bolt until you can feel that it's spinning freely. Then give the rack a quick push from behind the vehicle and it should slide right out of the hitch receiver. And you can see how I'm holding the rack to easily transport it from the vehicle to the garage. To reinsert the rack, align it with the hitch receiver on your vehicle and slide it in. Now you want to be careful when you are aligning the holes in the rack pivot with the holes in your hitch receiver. Don't stick your finger in there while you're trying to slide the rack in and out, because you could take off the tip of your finger. So just confirm and then go back and move it again until it's in the proper position. Once you've got the rack in position, you can insert your security pin and then tighten the 3/4 inch bolt on the end of the pivot. Tighten it up until you can feel a lot of resistance, just to make sure that the anti-wobble mechanism is firmly engaged. Thanks for watching the video. Now get out there and ride your bike.